The little bard who carries so many secrets within himself that even the Tsaritsa would envy him somehow manages to befriend the Shadow of Time, witches, and an Anemo dragon, all while being an Archon. A pretty good resume for someone who sleeps most of the time and wakes only when necessary, right? I think so too. That's why I decided to make a video about our very first Archon friend. We actually know enough about him to tell his story chronologically, from his birth to the present day. But along the way, we encounter many gaps, things history keeps silent about, things that were erased, or things told only indirectly. Today, we will delve into topics such as what exactly Venti is hiding, why he sleeps so often, how he is connected to Istaroth, and why he is so important to the game's lore. And as always, this is Lily. Don't forget to subscribe, grab something to eat, and let's begin. Venti was once a tiny elemental spirit among the Thousand Winds and possessed no divine power. In fact, being merely an Anemo spirit, he once accidentally encountered Istaroth in the Temple of a Thousand Winds. Hearing his wishes, she entrusted him with fragments of her power and authority. During the Archon War, the conflict between the gods Decarabian and Boreas plunged the lands of Mondstadt into snow and ice, a time later known as the Age of the Kings. According to one legend, this was when the people of Mondstadt learned to make wine. A tricky wind spirit took advantage of a careless guard and caused apples to ferment. The guard later ate one of these apples, discovered the joy of fermentation, and by pressing the apples created the first wine. Although Venti was never directly associated with this wind spirit, the people of Mondstadt call their wine the gift of the Anemo Archon. Around 2,600 years ago, the Gunhildr clan decided to leave Decarabian's capital to escape his tyrannical rule. But they were trapped in endless blizzards. Their desperate prayers, including those of the clan's daughter, Gunhildr, turned into faith that the wind heard and responded to. Drawing power from that faith, the spirit created shelter for them and granted Gunhildr the ability to protect others. Later, the wind spirit befriended the Nameless Bard, who dreamed of seeing the world beyond Decarabian's closed-off capital. When the bard decided to start an uprising against the tyrant, the spirit chose to help him alongside the red-haired warrior, Decarabian's former lover Amos, and Gunhildr. After a brutal battle, the tyrant was defeated, but Amos and the bard suffered fatal wounds. Since Boreas eventually refused to become the Anemo Archon, Venti took the vacant position and ascended. Gaining divine power, he took the appearance of the Nameless Bard to honor his memory. Gunhildr accepted this, but the red-haired warrior was displeased and left. After Barbatos became the Anemo Archon, his first act was to make the land more habitable for humans. Touching the lyre of the Nameless Bard, he summoned winds that scattered the snow and ice, and even split mountains, drastically reshaping Mondstadt's landscape. Many mountains in the east of Mondstadt were swept into the ocean, though some peaks still remain visible above the water. Barbatos also directed warm monsoons into the region, transforming Mondstadt from a snowy wasteland into fertile green land. From then on, the people of Mondstadt no longer had to worry about growing crops or surviving the cold, and the region became capable of producing the finest wine in all of Teyvat. According to legend, Barbatos accomplished all of this by summoning the four winds with the help of the primordial celestial atlas, in which the names of all the thousand winds are recorded. However, Venti himself never claimed to have created the four winds, and the modern concept of the four winds no longer refers to literal winds. It now represents four key figures of Mondstadt who emerged near the end of the aristocracy era, around 1,600 years after the fall of Old Mondstadt. Barbatos led his people to Lake Sidre, where New Mondstadt was built on an island in the center of the water. The people settled into their new home, creating festivals and celebrations, the People's Harpastum, Wineleys Fest, and the Windbloom Festival to honor the Anemo Archon and all he had done. With the appearance of wind gliders, people began attributing the ability to fly to Barbatos' blessing, although the first prototype was created by Leonard, possibly even before Barbatos became an Archon. Over time, other clans and tribes that had once lived in the frozen wasteland also joined the nation of Mondstadt, for example, the Lawrence clan and the Immenlocker clan. During that era, the Lawrence leader Venerair led the people of Mondstadt in constructing a grand statue in the central plaza, dedicated to Barbatos' descent. At the statue's base, the leaders of Mondstadt's clans carved an oath pledging that they would forever protect the nation and its freedom. These clans eventually became Mondstadt's aristocracy. Around 2,000 years ago, when the Archon War came to an end and the final divine throne was claimed, Barbatos began traveling to other nations, instead of constantly attending to his duties. He first appeared before Rex Lapis to offer him a bottle of wine, and did so many times afterward. Barbatos also played pranks, for example, spilling wine on the Geo Archon and attempting to copy his unmistakable seal. In the end, all 7 Archons and some of their closest allies began gathering in Liyue for joint meetings. Barbatos also met many Adepti, including Xiao and Madame Ping, and once saved Xiao from death under the weight of karmic debt by playing the flute throughout the night. At some point, Barbatos also befriended Murata, the then Pyro Archon, and visited Natlan at least once. According to Venti's own account, after the Archon War ended, he devoted himself to healing the wounds of the world, using the power of music to ease understanding between beings. Stories say he sang to the sky, the stones, the sea, and the stars, and ultimately received answers in the form of Dvalin, Rex Lapis, and the ancestor of the Wind Tribe, respectively. The stars gave no answer. Dvalin, a newborn Anemo dragon, became intrigued when he heard Barbatos' music during one of his performances and went to investigate the sound. Despite the ancient enmity between dragons and gods, Barbatos accepted Dvalin, taught his people not to fear the young dragon, and taught Dvalin himself how to speak the human language and how to sing. Satisfied that his people lived in stability, Barbatos decided that Mondstadt's free-spirited inhabitants should be governed by the will of the people themselves, not by a god-imposing authority. Therefore, he withdrew from public life, leaving behind a legacy of freedom. For unknown reasons, he later fell into a deep slumber. Over the next 1,600 years, Mondstadt's aristocracy gradually transformed into tyrants. Leading them was the Lawrence clan, whose former pride in surviving harsh blizzards eventually twisted into arrogance. They enslaved foreigners, oppressed commoners, hid Mondstadt's true history to conceal their own decay, and struck a deal with Ursa the Drake, ensuring their own safety at the cost of other people's lives. The prayers and desperate cries of the oppressed awakened Barbatos, who helped bring an end to the aristocracy's reign of terror by supporting those who rose up against it. Barbatos personally intervened when Vanessa and her tribe, enslaved by the aristocrats after seeking refuge in Mondstadt, were forced to take part in an unjust battle against Ursa the Drake. Appearing in his divine form, he lent Vanessa his power and drove the monster away, then called upon Lord Lawrence to fulfill his promise and free her people. During the ensuing uprising, Barbatos sowed discord among the aristocrats' soldiers by forging a contract supposedly signed between the nobles and Rex Lapis, claiming that all of Mondstadt, along with its population, was to be sold to the Geo Archon. Seeing the unmistakable seal of Rex Lapis on the document and fearing they themselves would become slaves like the people they oppressed, the soldiers turned against the aristocracy. Only much later did historians discover that this unmistakable seal had been a forgery. The aristocracy was overthrown, and several noble houses, especially the Lawrence clan, were exiled from Mondstadt. Vanessa founded the Knights of Favonius and became its first Grand Master. Barbatos officially appointed the Four Winds, the Wolf of the North, the Lion of the South, the Dragon of the East, and the Falcon of the West. Together, they rebuilt Mondstadt and vowed to protect it. The people of Mondstadt worshipped the Four Winds and built temples in their honor. At that time, storms still raged along Mondstadt's eastern shores. Vanessa entrusted the ancestors of the winds who served in the Church of Favonius with watching over the coastline and warning the city of approaching tempests. Sometime after their appointment, Barbatos sang to the sea, and his song was met with applause from a sister who overheard it. From that day on, no storms ever came from the sea again. At an unknown point in the past, the Hexen Circle, a secret organization of exceptionally powerful witches, challenged the Anemo Archon himself. However, Barbatos managed to persuade them to make music instead of war, and to resolve conflict through songs. From then on, the witches gathered for formal tea parties to share stories and secrets, settle disputes, and pour out their worries to the wind. One of their meeting places was a secret island above the Falcon coast of Mondstadt. Access to the island was granted by a lantern entrusted to Barbatos and kept under his protection. To reach it, one had to recite a spell. 500 years ago, various decisions made within the underground kingdom of Kynria led to the catastrophe that engulfed all of Teyvat. Monsters infused with abyssal power and created by the Kynrian alchemist Gold Rhine-Daughter forced the inhabitants of Kynria to abandon their underground realm and rise to the surface. This unintentionally released the creatures across Teyvat, causing chaos and darkness to consume all 7 nations. The Knights of Favonius, led by Grandmaster Arundilin and the wolf pup Rostam, launched an expedition into Khaenri'ah to fight these beings, suffering heavy losses. While they were away, the black dragon Durin, another creation of Rinnedatter, appeared above Mondstadt. Unwittingly, he spread poisonous fumes, causing a deadly black rain to fall from the sky. Barbatos awoke from his slumber to answer the pleas of his people and called upon Dvalin to help fight the dark dragon. Barbatos chose the abandoned Dragonspine Mountain as Durin's burial place, hoping to use the region's natural energy to contain the toxic miasma seeping from the dragon's body and shield Mondstadt from contamination. Empowered by Barbatos' music, Dvalin took to the skies above Dragonspine and battled Durin, ultimately defeating him with a fatal bite to the neck. To recover from his wounds, Dvalin retreated into deep slumber within the Tower of Decarabian, unaware that the tainted blood he had ingested would only worsen his future suffering. At some point during the Cataclysm, all members of the Seven, except for Greater Lord Rukkhadevata, were summoned to Khaenri'ah. The clash between Celestia and Khaenri'ah ended in the gods' victory. The Eclipse dynasty was destroyed, and the people of Khaenri'ah were cruelly punished. At least 3 Archons perished in the conflict, and those who survived were deeply scarred by the actions of the heavenly principles. The Tsaritsa also ceased all communication with Barbatos for reasons connected to the Cataclysm, after which he once again fell into slumber. Over the next 500 years, the people of Mondstadt forgot the Four Winds and were unaware that Barbatos had appeared during the disaster. During the Cataclysm, Barbatos also blew Mare Javari beyond the borders of Teyvat to prevent its blight from spreading beyond Tenoch Citadel. As a result, many souls became trapped in this now windless land. Well, after we've discussed everything, let's proceed in order. Let's move on to the theories. The first one is, how exactly Venti was an elemental spirit? Did this spirit have a will and consciousness, or why did Istaroth give him the opportunity to help the Gunhildr clan and take the body of the bard? It all starts with the fact that during the time of the first civilizations, a civilization lived on the site of modern Mondstadt that prayed to Istaroth. But after the War of Retribution, Istaroth erased herself from history, and everyone in Mondstadt forgot about her. In Decarabian's era, no one knew about her, and that she was a rather important figure in this region. As soon as disagreements began in Decarabian city and the Gunhildr clan left the city, they cried out for help, to which one of Istaroth's 1,000 winds responded. It is unclear whether this was an accident or a deliberate action by the Shade, but this is who Venti became. Later, he acquired many names, but initially he had only one of Istaroth's 1,000 winds. As we can see, Venti has his own personality, and I don't think Barbatos is Istaroth herself. But one might ask, how is it that they even have the same voice actor? Yes, this is true. And to this I will add that no one else has a completely identical voice acting by the same actor in all languages. There are cases when one actor voices 2 characters in English, in Korean, in Japanese, there are even some, but there are no such repetitions in Chinese, which is logical, since the game is Chinese. The conclusion is that this is not just some kind of incident or a simple coincidence, it is an intentional hint from the developers that they are closely connected. But to understand how, let's move on. As we know, Venti has more than once fallen into slumber, so to speak. The first time this happened was when he changed the landscape of Mondstadt and raised a new city on the lake. After that, he was afraid of becoming a tyrant like Decarabian and went to sleep. After, he woke up during the time of the Mondstadt aristocracy, when the clans ruled, as the manga tells us. Then he woke up during the Cataclysm of Khaenri'ah, when Durin attacked Mondstadt. And the last time was when the Traveler arrived in the Anemo region. But what does it even mean when Barbatos sleeps? As we know, this is not a special characteristic of Archons, because others have not done this. Look, Morax is twice as old as Venti, and everything is relatively normal with him. My theory is that his so-called sleep is actually time travel, and this will be a very big Chekhov's gun. In the previous video, I said that Vanna hears his voice from the future in order to change the present. Venti might have been doing something similar. That is why he told the Traveler that they met again. Because in the future, he did something important for us. And I think this will be revealed a little later, maybe in Venti's second story quest. Or when we return to Mondstadt for the Archon quest, but I don't think that will be soon. Is Istaroth behind all this? I think yes. Does she have some kind of plan or something like that? I think no, because the Shades trailer showed how she generally doesn't care what is happening. And unlike Asmodee, she doesn't need to invent anything. In any case, one of the developers was recently asked when the playable shades would be released, and whether they would be released at all. To which the developer said that if they were, it definitely wouldn't be in the first part of Genshin. That is, only after the end of the entire main storyline, which tells us that the developers might possibly make the shades into good girls. That's how it is. Barbatos is a small cog in the game that Istaroth is playing. Additionally, let's not forget that Mondstadt is connected to the moons, just like Liyue. If the connection with the Geo region is revealed in 6.3, then for Mondstadt, we will have to wait longer and pray that the quest with Varka in 6.5 will reveal the affiliation of the moons and Mondstadt. But this is cold info for now. In any case, write what you think about this. This was, as usual, Lily. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like buttons, and see you soon.